Coming up, the nationwide housing crisis is well covered in the media, but what is happening in Ipswich? One organisation at the front line reveals the current homeless situation with a staggering increase of more than 1,000% since the onset of COVID. Ipswich-based inCommunity Inc CEO Paul Tommasini joins the show to explain more. It's Friday, June 24, 2022, and I'm Alan Roebuck. Welcome to Ipswich Today, which acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which it is produced and pays respects to elders past, present and emerging. This podcast is supported by Kinetics, people-powered web hosting trusted by Australian businesses since 1999. This year is shaping up to be one of the most difficult in a generation for people looking to keep a roof over their heads. We've heard a lot about the situation nationally, with some very frightening data about the costs of housing and extremely low vacancy rate for rentals. What's the current situation in Ipswich? Paul Tommasini is CEO of inCommunity Inc, a local community support organisation which actually began in Ipswich about 40 years ago. Paul, thanks for speaking with Ipswich Today.
Thanks, Alan.
What does inCommunity Inc do?
So inCommunity essentially is a homelessness service. We've been operating in Ipswich since 1982, originally working with young people, and more recently we've started to work with families and adults as well. We also deliver tenancy education across Queensland and other parts of Australia, and more recently Beddown, which provides pop-up accommodation in underutilised spaces, has joined our organisation as well.
Well, I want to talk about Beddown, but we'll come to that shortly. If you Google the words housing crisis, any number of stories come up, and those searching to buy or rent will know firsthand how difficult that is. What's happening on the ground in Ipswich, and how does it compare to, say, 10 or 20 years ago?
So I guess the biggest thing is we have a massive supply issue at the moment, and that's become worse over the last couple of years in particular. Our services, we saw an increase at the beginning of COVID of 1,080% of people accessing our services, and that was short term, but it sustained at around 650% compared to pre-COVID numbers. So the number of people who are accessing housing support has increased significantly. And probably the biggest change, and why this is becoming, I guess, more mainstream and more seen in the media now, is there's lots of people who would probably never have thought they would be facing homelessness who are now facing homelessness because rentals that they're in have sold. There's people that we're connecting with who are accessing our services who may have been in a rental property for up to 10 years or more, had a really successful tenancy, and the only reason that they no longer have that tenancy is because the house has been sold, and as a result they're now looking for a property, but because vacancy rates are so low, there's so many people looking, so that real risk of homelessness is there to anyone now who's renting.
And when you think about it, it's a very scary thought. It's basically a no-fault eviction. You're a good tenant, but the house has been sold. What else are people saying to you?
So, look, most of the cases are around that. We're still getting people who are coming in through tenancies that have failed because of one reason or another, not paying rent, those kind of things. But those numbers are obviously diluted now in terms of the overall percentage of the people that we're seeing. Properties being sold is a big issue, and the number of people applying for properties is a huge issue. Ipswich is still, it's not as affordable as it used to be, but in comparison to other areas, affordability is a little bit better. It's not great though if you're on a low income, if you've got a fixed income, or if you've got a number of people living in your household. And when we put this along with the other pressures of cost of living at the moment, it paints quite a difficult situation for people. And we know housing and shelter is one of the basic needs, one of Maslow's basic needs. And if you don't have stable housing, it's very hard to put those other parts of your life together.
I imagine you work with other organisations across Ipswich to help people out in general.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll work with anyone who we can to provide support to someone. And that can be a range of different services, but we also work in with the private sector as well to try and link people into housing.
You recently took on the Beddown project, as you said at the beginning of the chat. Just explain Beddown further and how you became involved.
So Beddown, as I said, is very new to our organisation. We're only a few weeks into having it under the banner of inCommunity. It started about 4 years ago. Norm McGilvray, who is the founder, was in a car park one night, and he was thinking to himself, this space just isn't being used. When we all take our cars out of here, no one uses it, and there's this huge issue with people sleeping rough. So one thing led to another, and they decided that they'd trial some pop-up accommodation in a car park. The Beddown model, that hit international headlines because it was the first time anyone had ever taken a space like that and made it into a pop-up shelter.
And just to be clear, Paul, we're actually talking about multi-storey car parks that are undercover. Not open air.
So not outdoors. So quite a nice venue. Over the time, though, setting up accommodation in a car park is quite a challenging task. It's also, there's a lot of red tape and regulation which goes with it. So over the time, Beddown's models evolved quite a bit, but it's still about using spaces that aren't currently being used to provide accommodation for people in the short term who need that accommodation. And now more than ever, that accommodation is needed.
How are you reaching out to people that need this accommodation? How are you matching your service with those who need it?
We do a number of things. So here in Ipswich, we do outreach. So we'll actually go out on the street and look for people. We work with council and we work with other providers who are coming into contact with people who need an accommodation. We use Facebook. So social media has become a huge thing in the last few years, especially like these last post-COVID sort of years and post the beginning of COVID. Social media has definitely taken on a much bigger place in our work. And word of mouth. We've been around for 40 years, so there's a lot of people who know us, and we've been that constant. Our phone number's still the same as it was 40 years ago. It just has a 3 in front of it now. It's probably written on the windows of all the phone boxes around town.
Another service you offer is training people in how to actually apply for a rental. Now, to lots of folk, that's probably a little odd. It's pretty simple to apply for a rental, but you do offer that help.
Yeah, absolutely. This was something that came up just after we'd had the 2011, 2013 floods, and around that time, I was at a real estate networking breakfast with the community and real estate sectors to look at how we could provide better rental pathways for people. Because we know after 2011, a number of houses that were previously rentals were unable to be rented anymore. And one of the local principals at that event stood up and said something that really changed the way I was viewing our homelessness work. And it was that your clients are too risky for us. And it got me thinking about ways that we could help to mitigate that risk and step back a little bit, remembering that we're in a time when vacancy rates were nowhere near as tight as they are now. So people that were getting, lots more people were getting rentals than what they are now. So we decided that our way of being able to fix or to help mitigate some of that risk was through education. Because we know the skill set and the issues that were being identified by property managers were things that we could train people, and they were things that when people had the knowledge of, generally their outcomes in their tenancies were a lot better. So we set to starting what was originally a local project, just developed here in Ipswich to meet our local need, but soon became a statewide project and now is delivered outside of Queensland as well. And it's the largest ever piece of work that's involved the community sector engaging meaningfully with the private sector to create better rental pathways for people.
Your office has located to Limestone Street in recent times. It's more than just a place for you to set up your desk and your computer. What are you doing from those premises?
Yeah, so we're over here at 59 Limestone Street. A lot of people in Ipswich will know that. Started off as Fig Jam many years ago. Before that was a fish and chip shop and has had a few restaurants here since. We, at the beginning of COVID, we needed to set up a space to provide an access and meeting point for women, and particularly women over the age of 50 who were experiencing housing stress. So we set up this place. The restaurant came up, and it was a good time to be taking on a restaurant at the beginning of COVID because no one really wanted them. So we came and we set up it's called The Club, and it's a space where women can come who are needing support and help around their housing, or just needing to connect, and they can come and get that support, access what they need. But we also have our head office here as well. So we run all of our programs throughout Queensland and our interstate programs out of this office as well. And it's a great space. It's a great welcoming space, open a couple of days a week. Since we opened about 18 months ago, when we finally got the doors open and everything was ready to go, we've had about 1,500 people through the doors.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. And is it basically just open business hours? How do people contact you on that?
So it's open 2 days a week for about 5 hours a day. So it is fairly limited hours. And we put out details on our Facebook page at the moment as well. Our other programs are available outside of those hours though.
Paul Tommasini, there's no doubt you're providing a valuable service to the people of Ipswich. Thank you for speaking with Ipswich Today.
Thank you, Alan.
Don't forget to look for handy links in the show notes. Ipswich Today is supported by Kinetics, people-powered web hosting trusted by Australian businesses since 1999. This podcast is also listener-supported. Please make a once-only gift or regular donation to help keep it online. Just go to ipswichtoday.com.au and click the donate button on the homepage to make a payment through PayPal. Follow and stream this podcast from your favourite app, including iHeartRadio and Amazon Music Podcasts, or play Ipswich Today from smart speakers. Music is supplied by Purple Planet Music. This is Alan Roebuck. Thank you for listening.